Hello, I am Joel McLeod.
I'm Ron Montana.
And welcome to the 905er. The thing about getting older in life is you tend to lose touch with what's cool. Now, I know what you're saying, Joel, I'm cool, I'm with it, I know it's hip. Well, one of the core tenets of this podcast is to tell you the cold, hard truth, and that truth is we are no longer as cool as we once were. However, that doesn't mean we aren't here to help you out either. Hamilton over the years has cultivated a unique music, art, and culture scene. It's something that we've been wanting to dive a bit more into on this podcast and to talk about what it is that makes a city a city. Now, to get us an insight into that scene, we've invited on someone who has been plugged into the scene for the last 10 years, a woman named Kristin Archer. Kristin is the creator of a blog, I Heart Hamilton, which can be found at www.ihearthamilton.ca, where she has documented experiences around Hamilton since 2011, growing a local social media presence along the way. Kristin is also the host of the weekly show I Heart Hamilton on Community Radio 93.3 CFMU, where she further showcases Hamilton with an emphasis on the local arts and culture scenes. She is a major supporter of the local music scene through promoting local music, booking shows, and DJing. We reached out and invited her on today for a change of pace on the 905er as we talk about Hamilton's art scene and the role it plays in making the city a unique fixture, and not just the region, but the province as a whole. Now, once again, before we start our interview, we'd like to remind you to help support the podcast by becoming a Patreon member or by buying us a coffee. Your contribution goes a long way to keep us running and to help us continue to tell the stories that are most important to the 905 region. Links to both of our accounts are in the show notes. Please visit them today. And now, on with the show. Okay, well, I would like to welcome to the podcast for her first time, hopefully the first of many, Kristin Archer, who is the host of I Heart Hamilton, a blog and radio, and I suppose also podcast. Is that true as well?
Yeah, CFMU, has the podcast format as well. Yeah.
There you go. So she's more versed in this format than we are. So we're hoping her expertise will rub off on us for the foreseeable future. But Kristin, welcome to the 905er.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I love what you guys are doing.
Thank you. Well, we were hoping to go a bit more of the lighter route for this episode, as away from our normal complain and rant episodes, and hopefully take a look at a bit of the lighter side of Hamilton and kind of what makes Hamilton, what makes it unique, and why it's such a unique fixture in not only the 905 but the province as a whole. And your background in this field is 10 years strong. You said yes.
Yeah, 10 years in May this year.
Well, that's an impressive note. I mean, I hope we're going 10 years strong. How do you keep going 10 years into this, covering arts and culture and that je ne sais quoi of what makes Hamilton?
Yeah, I think Hamilton just gave me so much to work with. I mean, I couldn't have known when I started. It really started kind of as a personal project. It was me and a few other friends at the time after graduating from Mac. And it was just that initial hanging out, exploring the city together. And after that initial year, everyone kind of moved on to other things, but I saw that potential to really keep going. I wasn't done. My list was still growing, places that I wanted to visit in the city. And at that point, people were reaching out and sharing places with I Heart Hamilton. So I just right away, there was such a great response from people. And also my curiosity for sure kept going. There was always so much to do in the city, as I quickly learned, so many events happening all the time. So yeah, even 10 years later, there's still so much to keep up with.
What have you discovered about Hamilton so far? What is it that keeps drawing you back to, going around the next corner and seeing what's down the next block? What have you discovered so far?
Yeah, I think just such a unique city. Like I grew up here, and I definitely, my parents took me all around to different areas of the city growing up. But I really had an appreciation for the layout of the city. It's a big city, but has those pockets, those neighborhoods are all very distinct. And it is a big city, but it has a small town community feel to it. So that was apparent right away, this kind of tight-knit community that Hamilton has. Everyone's so supportive of each other. If there's a new local business pops up, everyone's really quick to rally around and support. So it was such a great way to connect. It was such a strong community that stood out to me right away. Yeah.
I was just going to ask, over those 10 years that you've been publishing or producing I Heart Hamilton, I mean, have you seen a big change in the city during that time?
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely probably a gradual thing. It's hard to kind of pinpoint, but I remember when I started, like the first, even I always think of Art Crawl as a sort of a big example of that, and James Street North. When I started, 2011 was attended my first Art Crawl. The first Super Crawl had been in 2009, so 2011 was my first Super Crawl. Even looking at an event like that, what it was that year, it was still so small. I mean, the smallest, or so I guess the first Super Crawl I attended is comparable to like an Art Crawl now. Like it just grew so much, like exponentially. And I think of that street. I didn't know too much about James Street North at the time, but people telling me like back in the day, it was like a place that you didn't want to go to. It was seen as like a sketchier area. Seeing all of these art galleries and restaurants pop up, who really held it down, who really brought people like Mulberry and White Elephant and O's Clothes, Blackbird were these key businesses and galleries, of course. And then I think about them, what they did for that area. And then over time now it's changed. And now there's kind of a lot of restaurants, a lot of galleries are gone now. So when you think about Art Crawl, it's not so much going in and out of these galleries anymore. So the street has changed so much. So I think about how the neighborhoods have changed. Definitely, like I miss that kind of early Art Crawl feel 10 years ago, a summer Art Crawl. It's kind of a different vibe now. It's hard to explain.
Yeah, I mean, I guess positive change is still change and can bring challenges with it, I guess. It happens, I'm literally one of Hamilton's newest residents in that I have moved to Hamilton in the last week. So see, might as well ask, for someone who's just arrived in the city and doesn't know much about it, and I'm not saying I'm the person who doesn't know much about it, I'm learning fast, but what would you say are the things that anybody should kind of immediately check out as Hamilton's strengths?
Yeah, I always think back to those different areas, as I mentioned before, the different BIA areas. Each neighborhood is really so distinct. So I would definitely say, spend a day, take one BIA at a time. Go to Locke Street and check out the energy there and the shops, see what it has to offer. Ottawa Street is its own little neighborhood. The International Village. That's how we tackled it in the beginning, is making a list and going to these different areas in the city. I also like to always say the outdoor spaces. People may not necessarily think of Hamilton as having as much green space as it does, but right outside of the downtown core, not too far away, you can get to so much beautiful space. I love the waterfront. The North End's always been one of my top favorite spots in the city. People don't realize maybe that we're a port city, so many boats and great nature spots and trails just all over. I was at the RBG actually just last night, and so many spaces that we maybe take for granted that are right in our own backyards.
Your comment on outdoor trails, and one thing that I always found interesting about Hamilton was that it's people don't notice, but it's one of the waterfall capitals of
the world,
yeah. or yeah. Is the world or Canada? I get them confused.
I think it's the world. Yeah, when they include the even the tiniest waterfall in that, but it's definitely, there's a lot. Yeah.
If it falls, it falls, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. People, think about that necessarily if you're only kind of seeing Hamilton as the Steel City.
And I guess, that's really, the thing that struck me literally since in the last week, that's not struck me before, as someone who's been based in Burlington for a long time, is that when you are a visitor to Hamilton and you're coming here to do, the kind of thing I would often come here, passports and kind of things you do once in a blue moon quite often, you would always be on those main thoroughfares, the huge one-way system. and that really creates a very misleading impression of what the city's actually like the minute you get out of your car and away from those two streets. That its perception of non-Hamiltonians of Hamilton is very coloured by that, literally that one-way system. Is that something you find as well?
Yeah, I think, especially, thinking of something like Main Street, it's like essentially like a highway that was just built that way to bring people as fast as possible. If you weren't stopping to look around, and that area in particular wouldn't be designed for exploring on foot very easily. So, for sure. I think over the years, maybe Hamilton got more on the map for its arts and culture. For sure, that would be one of the changes. Going back to that question that I noticed is that because of the people like on James North, businesses that set up shop there, they became the ones to really get the area going, and became that what then Tourism Hamilton then ended up promoting Hamilton as this arts and culture city. But it's really those humble beginnings of artists in Hamilton.
There's something that has kind of crawled into my mind in the last year or so in regards to Hamilton. One thing we talk on this podcast a lot about is development and kind of gentrification. The fact that housing prices in Toronto, and I'm sure people right now, Hamiltonians are throwing their iPhones out the window as I'm trying to compare Hamilton to Toronto. Bear with me, folks. There's a logic to my madness here. We've seen more and more people from Toronto moving out to Hamilton over the last 10 years or so. Housing prices were traditionally cheaper out this far, and so people would buy housing and whatnot and move out to Hamilton. However, over time, that's caused housing prices to rise in Hamilton. And the reason I'm not asking for your opinion on real estate, but it's more just the cultural flavor of Hamilton. I remember, like, back in the day, you have all these new young chefs who couldn't get a place to set up shop in Toronto. Rent was too high, but they could find a small place in Hamilton to set up for their menu. And I'm wondering if have you seen as we all talk about how the cost of living, cost of rent keeps going up and up and up. Have you seen that impact just kind of the cultural flavor of Hamilton, that kind of that scrappy entrepreneur, go get 'em attitude? Is that still there in the cultural, the food scene, the art scene, the music scene in Hamilton these days?
Yeah, I think it is, like, for artists and entrepreneurs. We do have such an innovative community who are scrappy and want to experiment, start new things, and the spirit of collaboration is very much a big part of the community. I think people definitely would have noticed the change, especially like artists who have been working and creating here all along. When new places move in out of town, people start setting up shop. There is that obvious kind of conflict with gentrification starts to happen. But I think that spirit of creating is still very much here. I think Hamilton, started then again marketing itself as the city of music. And I would say it's definitely a music community more than anything else. I think we have more, I think there's a statistic about more musicians here per capita than other areas. And I'm learning about more and more all the time. So definitely the creative spirit and that entrepreneurial spirit is definitely still going strong.
Is Hamilton kind of like the new Seattle or the new Halifax of Canada? And I guess I'm going to have to preface that to explain to some of our listeners what I mean by that. If you remember, back in the 90s, Seattle was the big music scene. Grunge, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden all came out of there. In Halifax, you had Sloan come out of that scene. Is Hamilton kind of like the modern it city for music?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think Hamilton, maybe is probably like, people are probably resistant to hearing like Hamilton is the new whatever. I remember at the time there, it was Hamilton is the new Brooklyn, and people were like, hey, wait a second, like we're our own thing over here. So I think we're very much, steadfast in being Hamilton. But I think it is a great city for a music scene because it, like I said, has that tight knit community. In Toronto, there would be, I would say, and I've heard this from musicians as well, more competition. Whereas in Hamilton, everyone genuinely is so supportive of each other. Musicians are, and it's a really great place to collaborate. And I think that just lends itself to more people coming here and feeling comfortable working here. Yeah.
Well, it says something that, like a band like the Arkells that have become international superstar rock stars still call Hamilton home.
Yeah, and they're not even technically from here, which is they formed here, but we can claim them.
Well, they played the dive bars, I guess, in Hamilton, which is where where you cut your chops if you want to make it big, I guess.
That's right. Yeah. I think Casper probably was one of their first shows, and McMaster is where they met and formed. So playing Battle of the Bands back in the day. Yeah, and the fact that they come back here and played the rally, which got postponed due to COVID, but it'll be back next June for another round of the rally. And that first rally was such an epic hometown event. It was like one of the biggest events of the year. So yeah, that hometown spirit is definitely, people, like I said, want to support the local artists.
And I mean, I guess this is not really a Hamilton question; it's more a global question with an obvious answer. But I mean, how do you think COVID has impacted that scene? Do you think it's ready to come back as soon as things start opening up?
Yeah, I think, the music scene definitely, I would say, goes in waves over the years. We've lost a lot of live music venues in recent years, losing the St. Hollywood last year, that not due to COVID, but that was up for sale for before that. But that is it's such a staple of the music scene, such a pillar. So now, we're down to the Casbah as that pillar, and a few other spaces, of course, pop up. But I think we're going to need to reinvest in live music in particular. I think I've always cared about live music so much, and even before COVID, it can be difficult to get people out to shows. I've been to so many great shows and they're like half empty rooms. Like, I don't know if there's enough people who are regularly investing in live music. So I think we do need to build up that scene again. Music in general, there are so many fantastic studios in Hamilton. It's definitely a destination even from outside of the city to record in Hamilton. So there's a great infrastructure there of kind of industry folks. And live music, though, I think we're going to need to build that side up.
How do you think we can do that? Is it a matter of the city has to do more concerts or more festivals, or is it just a matter of Hamiltonians just getting off their couches and going out to a club to see whatever band's playing at the mic that night?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. That's something I always think about. How do we get people to take a chance on a band they've never heard of, just supporting the local scene more. And maybe providing more resources for musicians. That's what I think the City of Music is attempting to do, is creating more of an infrastructure to attract musicians in Hamilton. Yeah, I always care about how do we get people out to shows, and there's definitely a huge community that likes going to maybe events and restaurants and things like that, but maybe not supporting maybe the smaller names. How do you get people to take a chance on that?
And I mean, I guess this was a little bit tough, and that Hamilton's almost too close to Toronto for its own good, and that some of the bigger bands will always go to Toronto rather than stop off in Hamilton. Whereas if Hamilton was another 50 miles down the road, it might be a stop on. And I guess, I mean, there's something I'm just thinking again of kind of my before I sort of came here myself, of almost of making Hamilton a center for the kind of hinterland surrounding it. That traditionally, some of the surrounding cities such as Burlington and Oakville, they tend to look in a kind of Toronto direction. And maybe that's snobbery, maybe that's, I don't know, I mean, it's just, maybe that's just whatever. Do you think that's changing now? My feeling is Hamilton's like right on the cusp of it's already happening, but it's on the cusp of really changing to kind of explosively changing almost. And it seems like, all kinds of factors are coming together at the moment in that regard. Is that a feeling you get as well? Or am I just making that up?
No, I think so. I think back to even 10 years ago when I started, I think that was unbeknownst to me, I just, started this thing, but I was really entering into a time in Hamilton where the Hamilton's arts and culture scene was a really burgeoning scene, and things really have changed so much since then. But that was a real turning point, I think, and also in the online landscape. Even when you think of, I came up with so many other bloggers who I met at the time. We all started at the same time. Someone like Joey Coleman was already fantastic doing his citizen journalism. There was a real kind of grassroots movement, I feel like, at the time. Where things were really starting to, it was just a great time to jump in and make these connections and get involved in the community. And it's only continued to grow, I think. Yeah, as we mentioned, Hamilton has become more on the map for its restaurant scene, for something like Art Crawl, for an event like Super Crawl. People know about it and come in from out of town for it. It's only continued to grow in those past 10 years. So I think, yeah, you're right. It's only going to continue to go in that direction. People are getting to know Hamilton and all that it has to offer.
Is it a matter of Hamilton hiding its light under a rock a bit? Because I'm thinking of, like, we have, we talked about the art scene and all that it's produced, and it just dawned on me. I mean, Hamilton is turning into a rather kind of a destination for filming. The one thing I would bring up is on Netflix, the show The Umbrella Academy is filmed in Hamilton, and if you watch it, like, you can. So we go, hey, I know that place. I know that place. That's, that's Gore Park. That's Diamond's Farm or wherever have you. And I would recommend to our listeners, if you get a chance, go check it out, because you'd sit there and you just kind of nitpick scenes in the background of, hey, I recognize where that is. I know where that's filmed. But, it's a matter of, like, I was questioning, like, why does this stuff not get, we don't think of Hamilton as kind of like this arts mecca of Ontario or of Canada anymore.
Yeah, and that's a good example right there. The film scene has really exploded in the past few years, and with a big film studio is being built in the North End. And yeah, you're right. We're seeing more and more Hamilton sites on TV and film. I think, Hamilton. It goes back to us being just that's scrappy, maybe. Steel town work ethic. Maybe people just don't think about us as having the art scene. I think it is more and more on the map with stuff like that, being in more TV and film for sure. Yeah.
Is it something like maybe Hamilton just kind of has to grow into a new identity other than just Steel Town or Steel City? I don't know what, but I just like it. Hamilton always struck me as a city that has much more to offer than just steel.
I think we're beyond that now. I mean, when Art Crawl started, then the art is the new steel tagline popped up. I think people, and then taglines like "You can do anything in Hamilton." So it definitely made a turn into that at some point in the past 10 years since I've been blogging. Anyway, I think it is more on the map though for all of those things. And we have such a great community here. That's something that always stands out to me. I think, despite, as you guys talk about on the podcast, the frustrating nature of who's in charge, city council and the mayor, things like that, despite that aspect of the city slowing us down, you have such a great community that is so innovative and investive and supportive, and these voices that are so important. So that's what's driving things forward.
Well, you almost have to ask yourself, what would happen if you kind of took the break off of that community and kind of really doubled down and said, what if we unleash the talent that's there, and how would that transform the city into who knows what?
Yeah, because all the raw talent is here for sure.
And I wondered. I mean, this is certainly something. I mean, this very much wanted to focus on really the positive sides of Hamilton today, and but coming back to that kind of political side, and a lot of the problems that seem to come from the council side of things, or of that. Like you said, that kind of almost like a break on the innovation and change and positive developments that are happening comes, to my mind, from basically from amalgamation and the councillors who are suburban, who don't really feel any great attachment to the city of Hamilton proper, because they're out in the burbs somewhere and they're worried about the voters in those neighbourhoods. I've just entirely put my own spin on it right there. Do you think that's a fair point, though? I mean, I'm just thinking with the huge LRT debate, it seemed to be, central Hamilton was on board with it. The more suburban wards were against. Is that kind of what you feel is going on, and that really we need to kind of get to the point where Hamilton core kind of doesn't let the tail wag the dog, so to speak?
Yeah, it's such a spread out city, so amalgamation definitely added to that issue of people on the outskirts there may not be going. They may be only going downtown when there's, like we mentioned, a huge touring act coming to what I still call Cops Coliseum, First Ontario Place, but maybe they're not coming down.
It's always going to be Cops Coliseum.
It is, absolutely. Ivor Wynne.
It's like trying to rename the Rogers Center Sky Dome. It's always going to be Sky Dome. Yeah, it's always going to be Ivor Wynne.
Yeah. So there definitely is that divide, even from like the mount on the mountain to downtown. I know some people remember when Supercrawl just started and people didn't even know what that was or had never heard of an art crawl. There definitely is a divide in the city in terms of being invested in the arts and people coming down to explore the smaller businesses.
Well, here's a fun hypothetical, because we were trying to avoid the politics discussion and we still got wrapped up into it because
that's my fault.
We just can't help ourselves. So I'm going to try and steer us back away from it. Let's play a fun hypothetical. Like, what would you like to see happen in Hamilton? Like, what would you think would be a really cool event or thing, a venue or something that you think would be really cool? If somebody's listening right now and they got a couple $100 million to spend on something, it's like, I don't know what, and they're like, you know what, Chris, I'm going to listen to this Kristin Archer girl. she can tell me, convince me in the next 5 minutes, I'll write her a check. What would you want? What do you think would be a cool thing to see in Hamilton?
Oh wow, on the hot seat with this one. I don't know. I think. Let's see. I am always thinking about live music venues. How do we keep those going in the city? I love when the stadium. Much debate about the new stadium being built, but I loved when Arkells did the rally concert there. I wish that could be a concert stadium that big touring acts could perform at year round. So, that would be such a great use of space, and what a neat to see a huge band in your backyard if you live in the East End there. That would be really cool. I like the potential of the North End, the waterfront. That's really building up. I'm curious to see where that's going. That could be a full kind of arts entertainment complex down there. I'd love to see more on the mountain concession. There's a great space, the Zoetic, but what if there was a great destination venue up there?
Well, that'd be fun to do if you did maybe a citywide battle of the bands.
Yeah.
If you had, because that's one thing that I always thought was interesting about Hamilton was how many bands, you had the Arkells Monster Truck and a few others who got their start in Hamilton, but how many others are itching to be seen? That every other kind of major city has their own, homegrown music fest. It'd be nice to see something that showcases more, not kind of that Canadian, that's typical Canadian. Like, after you make it big, oh yeah, now we're proud of you. We're proud of you after you become rich and famous. Why? Where's the where's the love when they're still sweating it out? Trying to make it to the next gig in a broken down van.
Yeah, and speaking of there is amalgamation, there's probably some band in a garage in Stony Creek somewhere that needs a stage to play. And I think of the Dirty Nil. That's another huge export out of Hamilton. But there's Dundas, Ontario. Every time they go on stage, they'll tell you they're from Dundas. So how do we get those people? And at a young age too, I think about needing more all ages shows maybe as a component. Maybe a daytime show, Battle of the Bands. How do we engage the live music supporters early on?
That's. I mean, I'm trying to remember if I'm confusing different things, but Hamilton has a, and this is the profound level of my ignorance in some ways, but there is a music festival in Hamilton, isn't there? Because I noticed it a few months ago, or am I imagining things completely?
Yeah, Supercrawl would be the main event in Hamilton every year.
Supercrawls,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this year it was they did a 2-day event at Bayfront Park, but that normally takes over James Street North annually. Yeah.
And there are other
there's other big events too, like the Festival of Friends, and
it's definitely that music scene kind of thing is something that excites me as someone sort of coming to a new place and being able to, the other thing that Hamilton has going for it is it's quite walkable or bikeable in the core kind of area anyway, and you can kind of get from one side to the other in about 10-15 minutes, again, of the kind of core neighborhoods. Yeah, that's really exciting when for the last however long, if I wanted to see a band, I was probably going to go to Toronto to do it. So it's which involves cars and trains and goodness knows what. So I guess it's that side of things that really appeals to people and perhaps to sort of a younger generation looking at Hamilton as a place to move to if they weren't born here already, of kind of having a lot of the advantages of, say, Toronto or something like that, but without the crazy prices or without it's not quite as overwhelming as Toronto can be, I guess. So yeah, I mean, it just seems so much like a moment in history that could be a real I mean, the turning point is happening, but it's I just feel like there's they're kind of on the cusp of something right now that's really very exciting and quite distinctive within this podcast covers the whole 905. That how we were very aware from the outset that Hamilton is kind of something different within the 905 because it was a pre-existing city with its own history and its own entity, whereas the other cities are kind of very new and are kind of just starting to take on characters of their own in some ways. So it's an exciting time. So what do you think? I mean, just in the last few sort of minutes that we've got available, looking forward to the next 10 years of I Heart Hamilton, I mean, what do you think you'll be reflecting on when you reach your 20th year?
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, it'll be 11 in May, so this year has definitely flown by for sure. I hope to see. I always go back to the music scene because I'm so invested in that. And one thing that has continually impressed me just this past year alone, despite the pandemic, that there was so much music still out there. People still sharing stuff with me for the radio show all the time. People didn't stop creating despite not being able to play live. There's still so much out there. Which was so exciting to see. Nothing slowed down on that front. So I think our music scene will only continue to grow. And I'm sure we'll get some more venues in the future.
Well, there's something that's popped in my head because our music was really important to me growing up as a kid in the 905. And so, but how I consume music, I'd always have to go to like a Sam the Record Man or Sunrise Records or an HMV. None of those places exist anymore because of streaming services. And so, I kind of like there's something you keep coming back to the live venue scene for live music, and I want to kind of maybe leave this on the last note for this episode was that just really the importance of that live music scene for new sounds and new bands and new acts to emerge, because the idea in the past was, you go down to the record shop, you buy the new record, the new single, whatever, come home, listen to it, you like it, you hate it, you move on. That doesn't happen anymore. It's all an algorithm, right? It's all Spotify or Apple Music or whatever's playing. Can you maybe just get somebody who's plugged into the scene? Can you maybe just share us like the insight for an up and coming band of the importance of that live music venue, taking a chance on a young band to give them a set for 15 minutes or half an hour on some night, and the importance it is for us as the consumers to go and kind of discover that new sound again.
Yeah, it's so important, and from the audience perspective, I always want people to think about the how valuable it is that shared experience of a live performance, because we it is so easy to stream a song or watch something on Netflix, but really making that effort to, I mean, every time you debate, oh, should I go to this tonight? Every time I do go out there, it's always worth it. So I would say, take a chance on that live event, because the experience of it, there's really nothing like it. And then you're directly supporting an artist, giving them your time, buying a piece of merch, whatever it is to support. You're supporting the venue as well. And it gives the band a chance to grow and test out their stuff and get out there and make those connections. And it's overwhelming enough to know when starting a band what to do. As you mentioned, with streaming now, you have to be on every social media platform ever, all the time. You can't stop. You got to make those algorithms. There's so much that goes into it. But then also the live performance side is so important as well. It's not just putting your music out there, recording, but also having that experience. And that's probably why, for so many, that's why you do it, right? Yeah.
Even bands who are relatively popular really don't make any money from Spotify, don't make huge amounts from Apple, and it's kind of put the emphasis back on. It's put the emphasis back on live music in many ways as the only way you're actually going to make money as a musician, to a significant degree these days, unless you're, I know there are things like Bandcamp and so on as well, but they really need to do the live shows now if they're going to make a living. Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, definitely. And that's another, I should say, advantage to Hamilton too. We're in such a great spot that for a band to get out there and start touring and playing other shows, you travel in any direction, you're in another city with another great music community. It's a great little network here in Southern Ontario. So that's important for all of our neighboring cities to have those venues to play. And it's so vital to the infrastructure of up and coming artists.
And so right now, with the closure of that venue a year or so ago, are you hoping just someone comes forward and takes a chance and throws some money at trying to start a venue, or do you think it would be the kind of thing that maybe the community almost needs to do, like start up a cooperative or something, or find a way of creating a venue that doesn't necessarily depend on someone kind of coming forward and buying an expensive place?
Yeah, I think it will always be a mix of things, and that's a great thing about Hamilton too. Is there's such a community of the kind of DIY aesthetic that a lot of people host house shows or throwing events in unique spaces. Someone like Fort Elgin, Matt Thompson, a great example of that, taking a space, doing a pop-up event for a night or in his own home. There's great or artist collectives too that have done that. A space like Haven, which is gone now in Barton. There were galleries that do pop-up events. I think that the community really steps up and fills those gaps. And it's great to have a mix of the traditional venue space, which we're always going to need. And then there's also a great network and community of house shows and different unique ways of performing. And during the pandemic, backyard shows or whatever it is, there's always going to be people creating stuff like that, which is awesome.
I see we're coming up on our 40-minute marker, so I'm going to put a pin in the conversation for maybe pick this up next time. But Kristin, I'd like to thank you for coming on to the 905er. It's been a joy to take a break from the politics talk about something that I love: music, art, culture. It's been fun, and I am hoping that now that we're starting to be able to get out with passports and vaccine passports and whatnot, to find the next hidden gem, the next up and coming band in Hamilton.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, lots to talk about always. So thanks for having me.
Thank you
so much.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.